We'll start with India's biggest tax reform in years. More than 400 goods and services are set to get cheaper. We'll tell you what it means for you, the Indian economy, and which other countries are introducing similar measures and why now. Meanwhile, the US economy is teetering. Moody's has warned that a recession is coming. And Donald Trump's tariffs face their toughest test yet. A US court has ruled them illegal. The president has moved the Supreme Court. Will he pass the test? Also on the show, an exclusive interview with India's Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal. Plus, Vladimir Putin says he's ready to meet Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, provided the meeting happens in Moscow. A hot mic catches Putin, Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un talking about immortality. Lisbon is in shock after a deadly rail crash. Google slapped with a $425 million fine for a massive privacy breach. And the South Korean film that is not just breaking Netflix records, it is filling planes with tourists and boosting the economy. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Prime Minister Narendra Modi hosts his Singaporean counterpart, thanks him for supporting India's fight against terrorism. The two leaders ink several key agreements across sectors, including artificial intelligence, space and digital asset innovation. Singapore is India's largest trade partner in Southeast Asia. Staying with India, the Cookies agreed to open a key national highway which serves as Manipur's lifeline. It is part of an agreement between the centre, the state government and the ethnic groups. The decision comes 2 years after clashes broke out in the northeastern state. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is likely to visit Manipur soon. Chinese President Xi Jinping holds talks with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, who is in Beijing on a rare foreign visit. This is Kim's second reported trip abroad in 6 years and his first to China since 2019. Beijing is Pyongyang's most important ally as North Korea remains under crippling international sanctions. A crowded ferry boat capsizes in Nigeria, drowning more than 30 people. The boat, carrying nearly 100 people, reportedly hit a tree stump. Accidents are common on Nigeria's busy rivers. They're often caused by overloaded boats or poor safety regulations. And the French women's boxing team has been barred from the World Championships after the results of their gender tests were not delivered on time. The event started in Liverpool today under the World Boxing's new policy. Women competing in the event had to undergo mandatory genetic sex testing. We begin with the biggest story of the day, India's GST reform. The government has cut consumption tax. It is called GST, the Goods and Services Tax. Now, GST is an indirect tax. You pay it whenever you buy something, the goods that you consume and the services that you use. You pay a GST on both. It is not like income tax, which is charged on your salary. GST is paid by everyone, no matter which income bracket they fall in. They have to pay a GST. And now India is cutting this tax in a big way. This is the biggest change in India's tax system in the last 8 years. The GST was introduced in 2017. Back then, it replaced a messy web of indirect taxes. That reform, the one introduced in 2017, reshaped how the government collects taxes. And now these taxes have been slashed. So it's like a reset of the system, a reform that touches the life of every Indian. Prime Minister Modi announced it last month during his Independence Day address.
इस दिवाली में आपकी डबल दिवाली का काम मैं करने वाला हूं। इस दिवाली में आपको एक बहुत बड़ा तोहफा देशवासियों को मिलने वाला है। पिछले 8 साल से हमने जीएसटी का बहुत बड़ा रिफॉर्म किया। पूरे देश में टैक्स के बर्डन को कम किया, टैक्स की व्यवस्थाओं को सरल किया और 8 साल के बाद समय की मांग है कि हम एक बार उसको रिव्यू करें।
It was finally cleared yesterday. The GST Council met last evening. This is a constitutional body. It oversees the GST system. This body is chaired by India's finance minister, and finance ministers of all Indian states are part of it. Together, they cleared the government's new tax proposal. And we've been telling you about this on the show. Earlier, the GST system had 4 tax slabs: 5%, 12%, 18% and 28%, 4 slabs. Now, after the reform, just 2 tax slabs remain, the 5% and the 18%. They remain. The 12% and the 28% rates are gone. So what does this mean for you? Your everyday items will become cheaper. Most of them will become cheaper. Taxes have been cut on almost 400 product categories. They cover every corner, every aisle of the supermarket. Let's start with the basics. Stuff like milk, cottage cheese, even flatbreads. They will now be taxed at 0%, meaning no tax at all on these daily essentials. Then we have packaged foods, stuff like snacks, savory mixes, instant noodles and chocolates. Earlier they were taxed from 12 to 18%. Now they're down to just 5%. Some dairy products are also in the same bracket, like butter and cheese. They will also be taxed at 5%. For you, it means direct savings every time you buy groceries. The next category is personal care. Things like shampoo, soap, hair oil, toothpaste, toothbrush. Taxes on all these items have been slashed. Now there's a flat 5% tax. And it's not just daily essentials. Some big ticket items are also getting cheaper. This includes small cars, motorcycles, televisions, air conditioners, washing machines. Earlier, they had a 28% tax. Now they've been brought down to 18%. Another winner is healthcare. Life and health insurance policies are now tax-free. 33 life-saving medicines are also tax-free. Taxes on medical devices will fall from 18% to 5%. Everyday services will also get cheaper. We are talking about haircuts, salon visits, gym memberships. They will now be taxed at 5%. Now let's tell you about the things that will get more expensive. Your luxury and sin goods. This includes luxury cars, high-end motorcycles and fizzy drinks, the ones that are packed with sugar and caffeine. They will now face a 40% tax, 40% tax. Same for tobacco, it will be taxed at 40%. So there is a simple takeaway. Essentials will get cheaper. Luxury and harmful products, or sin goods as they're called, will be taxed at a higher rate. So the biggest winners in this reform are the middle and lower income families. They get the biggest benefits.
These reforms have been carried out with a focus on the common man. Every tax levied on common man's daily use items have gone through a rigorous looking into, and in most cases the rates have come down drastically. Labor-intensive industries have been given a good support. Farmers and agriculture as a whole will also benefit by the decisions we have taken today. Health-related also will benefit. So the key drivers of economy have been given a prominence.
The new GST rates will take effect on 22nd September. That's around the time when India's festive season begins. That's also when the demand for consumer goods shoots up. People buy big-ticket items like your televisions, air conditioners, other household appliances. If prices are lowered at this time, sales could go up. Here is how Prime Minister Modi put it. This is what he said about the reforms today.
अगर मैं सार बताऊं तो यही कह सकता हूं कि इससे भारत की शानदार अर्थव्यवस्था में पंचरत्न जुड़े हैं। पहला, टैक्स सिस्टम कहीं अधिक सिंपल हुआ। दूसरा, भारत के नागरिकों की क्वालिटी ऑफ लाइफ और बढ़ेगी। तीसरा, कंजम्पशन और ग्रोथ दोनों को नया बूस्टर मिलेगा। और चौथा, ईज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस से निवेश और नौकरी को बल मिलेगा। और पांचवा, विकसित भारत के लिए कोऑपरेटिव फेडरलिज्म यानी राज्यों और केंद्र की साझेदारी और मजबूत होगी।
But remember, this tax relief also comes at a cost. The government's revenues will take a hit. How much money are we talking about? Up to $6 billion. That's how much the government stands to lose, $6 billion. So why are they doing it? Why is the government taking this hit? Well, here's the calculation. More demand will cover the losses. Lower taxes mean more money in people's hands. More money means higher spending. And at this point, India needs higher spending. Remember, consumption makes up 60% of India's economy. So if sales rise, the government can recover what it loses in taxes. And experts are quite optimistic about this. They believe the tax cut will boost India's growth. It could add 0.2 to 0.3% to the GDP. But why now? Why has the government decided to do this now? One big reason could be the Trump tariffs. He has slapped a 50% tariff on Indian exports to the US. This will hurt Indian businesses and by extension, it will hurt India's growth. So this tax relief could be an attempt to offset that. Although India's finance minister insists that that is not the case.
The tariff turmoil is not a matter which influenced the GST reform because we've been at it now for more than 1.5 years. Some group of ministers was working on rate rationalization. Some other group of ministers a bit later was working on insurance and so on. And compensation cess was a reality that it is going to end the moment you paid back the loan. None of this has anything to do with the tariffs.
Nothing to do with the tariffs, she says. Either way, the tax cuts will help in softening the blow. This reform is not a silver bullet, but it is a time-tested strategy. When tariffs go up, domestic demand can absorb the shock. In fact, many countries have resorted to this. Canada has paused duties on key US imports for 6 months. China has been trying to boost domestic consumption. It has offered subsidies, shopping vouchers and e-commerce discounts to people. France, Spain, Italy and Germany have also slashed taxes on food, energy and restaurants. South Korea has expanded cash transfers. It is giving tax credits to families and encouraging citizens to buy local cars and electronics. And now India has introduced a tax reform to boost spending. Like I said, this is not a foolproof plan to counter tariffs, but it can act like a cushion. It can protect the Indian economy from further shocks. India's moves are aimed at sustaining high levels of growth. Meanwhile, the US seems to be heading in the opposite direction. The fears of a recession are back, and this time the warnings are louder than ever. They come from investment bank UBS and credit ratings agency Moody's. Now, UBS says there's a high chance of recession. As for Moody's, their chief economist has declared that the US is on the brink. Let's look at both these claims one by one, starting with UBS. How did they calculate the probability of recession? Well, UBS says it is tracking what it calls the hard data, stuff like personal income, consumer spending, industrial production, and employment. These numbers turned negative back in the month of February. They have not collapsed, but they have stayed weak. And UBS has described the situation as quote-unquote soggy. The bank has identified 3 red flags. First, the cost of borrowing. Short-term loans are more costly than long-term borrowings. It's a sign of an economy under stress. The second red flag is that credit is under pressure and the risk of loan defaults is higher. Third red flag, America's economic data. It appears flat and fragile. UBS has looked at the data in 2 ways. One model puts the chance of a US recession at 93%. A 93% probability of recession. That is extremely high. What about the second model? It combines several key signals. Stuff like jobs, spending, incomes, credit. And this second model puts the overall probability of recession at 52%. So that's closer to a coin toss. Either way, the risk of a recession is quite high. And that's not all. UBS is also worried about stagflation. What is stagflation? It means that your growth is slowing down, but prices are rising and it's happening at the same time. So slower growth and more inflation. Then we come to Moody's. It is voicing similar concerns. Its chief economist has weighed in. His name is Mark Zandi. Listen to what he said in an interview.
I don't think the economy is in a recession, at least not at this point, but it feels like it's on the brink, it's on the precipice of this recession.
His biggest concern is job creation. In the month of July, the US added very few new jobs. Zandi fears that those numbers could fall even further.
With the revisions, it is conceivable that the recently paltry job gains turn into losses. If so, there will be a legitimate debate over whether the economy is already in a recession.
Zandi also looked across the map of America. He studied all American states and apparently saw a troubling picture. He says almost 1/3 of the US economy is already in recession or very close to it. Another 1/3 is flat. That means no growth or decline. Only the final third is still expanding. Last month, Bank of America delivered its own outlook, and they too raised the risk of stagflation. They blamed it on two of Trump's policies. First, limits on immigration, and second, the tariffs. So the warnings are all stacking up. UBS says there's a more than 50% chance of recession. Moody's says the economy is on the brink, and Bank of America says stagflation is coming. If you join the dots, this is what you get. The US is still far from a collapse, but it's not stable either. The road ahead is treacherous for the United States of America, and that does not bode well for the rest of the world. This is, after all, the world's biggest economy. It may be slowing, and it won't go down alone. It will drag others with it. Being a president is a bit like juggling knives in the dark. One slip and you're bleeding political capital. Donald Trump knows this well. His tariff war has upended the global economy. Countries are scrambling for deals. Some want countermeasures. Businesses are bleeding money. But in the courts, Trump's arguments are failing. His trade war has been deemed illegal. A lower court has said that Trump does not have the authority to slap tariffs, that it's not part of the presidential mandate. So Trump is now appealing to the US Supreme Court. But will his tariff argument stick there? And for those who haven't followed, here's a quick primer. In the month of April this year, US President Trump slapped tariffs on the whole world. He called it Liberation Day. In the weeks that followed, those tariffs were challenged in court because Trump used a provision called the IEEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. This is what he invoked to impose the tariffs. Now, as the name suggests, it is an emergency act. It is meant for rare national emergencies. This act gives the US president broad powers like imposing tariffs on the rest of the world. So Trump used it to wage an irrational trade war. No wonder it attracted so many lawsuits. Last week, he got his first setback at a lower court in the United States. It's called the US Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit. It ruled that Trump's tariffs were illegal. The decision was 7-4, meaning 7 judges said it was illegal and 4 said it was legal. So the verdict was quite clear. The tariffs are illegal. The emergency powers did not fall within the president's mandate. It is the job of the US Congress. That's what the court said. So now Trump is taking this to the US Supreme Court. He's hoping that the top court will overturn the lower court's decision.
We're in a much better position. We have trillions of dollars coming into our country. If we didn't have tariffs, we would be a very poor nation, and we would be taken advantage of by every other nation in the world, friend and foe. We're not going to let that happen. And we have a very, very big case in the Supreme Court. I can only say this. Our country has a chance to be unbelievably rich again, but it can also be unbelievably poor again. If we don't win that case, our country is going to suffer so greatly.
What's the backup plan, sir?
But I think we're going to have a big victory.
The Supreme Court can do 3 things now, the US Supreme Court. 1, it can deny the review, which would mean that the lower court's ruling stands. 2, the Supreme Court can uphold the lower court's ruling. Again, that means that the lower court's ruling stands and Trump tariffs are illegal. 3, the Supreme Court can turn it down. It can rule that Trump's trade war is legal. Now, Trump is fervently hoping for the third scenario, for the court to say that what he's doing is legal, but history is not on his side. Back in the 1970s, Richard Nixon played the same card. He slapped tariffs using emergency powers. His excuse? Inflation, currency shocks, economic chaos, and of course, the catch-all phrase, national security. So Nixon introduced tariffs using emergency powers. The US Congress did not buy it. The lawmakers saw a president stretching emergency to cover whatever he wanted. So they pushed back, and they pushed back loudly. And eventually they clipped the president's wings. They tightened the rules. They made sure that future presidents could not just declare an economic headache, a crisis. Well, Nixon learned the hard way, and Trump hasn't learned at all from history. And this is where it gets messy. In the court filings, the US administration says the tariffs are essential for peace in Ukraine. That's how they've justified it. The tariffs are meant for peace in Ukraine. That tariffs against India are crucial for pushing for peace. Now, Trump, as you would know, has announced secondary sanctions on India. He says this is because India continues to buy Russian oil. So India faces 50% tariffs, and Trump is framing it as proof, as justification for his irrational trade war. And he says this is how he's punishing Moscow. Listen to this.
And given this, is it reason why you should slap or would consider slapping secondary sanctions on Russia if they're conspiring against the U.S. now?
Well, I've already done that with regard to India, and we're doing it with regard to other things. And I put out a truth last night. You saw that. And I was the one that brought it up. I said they're only doing this to...
He's also talking about how India offered concessions. Again, these are his claims. This is not what India has said, but it makes for a curious mix. Basically, Trump wants to appear firm, but also leave the door open for a deal. In fact, he was asked about India so many times that Trump snapped.
You've expressed many times your frustration and disappointment with Putin, but there's no action since you took your office.
How do you know there's no? How do you know there's no action?
But
really?
don't you worry?
Wait. Who are you with?
I'm with Polish radio.
Okay. How do you know there's no action? Would you say that putting secondary sanctions on India, the largest purchaser outside of China, they're almost equal, would you say there was no action? That cost hundreds of billions of dollars to Russia. You call that no action? I did. I said, if India buys, India's got big problems, and that's what happened. So don't tell me about that.
So what happens next? All eyes are on the US Supreme Court. If Trump wins, presidents will keep wielding emergency powers. If he loses, his authority shrinks. Future presidents might find themselves similarly boxed in. And then there's global trade. Billions of dollars in tariffs are at stake. Refunding them could upend international negotiations. Nixon pushed the boundaries and was rebuked. Trump is testing them again. And whether he walks away with a win or a loss, the ripple effects will be felt far beyond the White House. In the courts, in the US Congress, and in every country now wondering whether America is even pretending to play by the rules or just making them up as it goes along.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
So I think, let me rewind a little bit and, come to what you've been dealing with, and you've been at the center of all of it. Till about July 6th or 7th, things seem to be going fine with in our negotiations with the US. Then in a matter of weeks, we had a tariff of 25%, then another 25% on top of that. What went wrong in these few weeks?
Well, I think the US-India relationship is one of the most consequential relationships on the globe today. We are two very large democracies. We believe in the rule of law. We are allies and friends for long. We have had certain blips, like we had the sanctions post the nuclear tests in 1998.
Yes.
I look at this only as one more situation which will pass as there's a deeper understanding of the reality of the situation. And I'm very confident this relationship will only strengthen in the years to come.
And how soon do you expect things to resolve?
It could happen soon enough. It may take some time. Irrespective, we will continue to be friends. We will continue to be engaged with the United States. And I'm sure we will continue to have greater economic relationships, defense relationships, greater interest in a safe, fair and secure Indo-Pacific. In some sense, it's a very multi-dimensional relationship where we contribute to each other's economies in different dimensions and will continue to do so.
It's comforting to hear these words from you. And we also picked up that you said somewhere that things could happen as soon as November. Is that a correct?
Well, if you recall when Prime Minister Modi and Honorable President Donald Trump met in February, they had tasked the two teams to conclude the first tranche of a bilateral trade agreement by fall of 25, which is about November 2025. And I'm sure we will continue to be engaged to try and find solutions to reach that outcome. If at all it's give and take a few days, a few weeks, a few months, in a nation's history, such small periods will not define long-term objectives and goals.
I think what surprised and even shocked some people was the erratic and incendiary language that was used by, some of the officials of the Trump administration, calling it Modi's war or, a laundromat of Kremlin. I mean, how do you react to this? I mean, are conciliatory noises coming from the other side now?
I think there could be either some misunderstandings or some personal opinions that may be reflected in that. I do not think that deters the US and India from continuing to maintain our strategic alliance and partnership. Our friendship is far stronger than a few comments that may be made by a few people.
China in the beginning had retaliated with retaliatory tariffs. Would India do anything like that?
Well, India is a patient country, and I believe we should give it every effort to come to a better, deeper understanding within the framework of international trading laws. And therefore, I think we have always believed in dialogue, in diplomacy, and an effort to strengthen rather than weaken relationships.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
So I think, let me rewind a little bit and, come to what you've been dealing with.
Now to a Network 18 exclusive. Earlier today, India's Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal sat down with Group Editor-in-Chief Rahul Joshi. He praised India's GST reform. He spoke about the trade wars and the Trump tariffs. Piyush Goyal remains optimistic about reaching a deal with the United States. He also discussed the thaw with China and whether it could open the door to renewed trade ties with Beijing. Here's an excerpt from that conversation.
All this started with the Prime Minister's address on the 15th of August, Independence Day, when he spoke about Atmanirbharta. So that is where it all started, and it has led to this. He gave a hint to us on that day that big reforms are coming. So here it is, your first reactions on this GST rationalization.
Well, I'd like to compliment Prime Minister Modi for taking this bold decision. I see this as the most transformative step the nation has seen possibly in the last 50, 60 years. So I think all in all, India is poised for a very bright future. I assure you our exports also this year will be higher than last year.
Let's come to that. Till about July 6th or 7th, things seem to be going fine with in our negotiations with the US. Then in a matter of weeks, we had a tariff of 25%, then another 25% on top of that. What went wrong in these few weeks?
Well, I think the US-India relationship is one of the most consequential relationships on the globe today. We have had certain blips, like we had the sanctions post the nuclear tests in 1998.
Yes.
I look at this only as one more situation which will pass as there's a deeper understanding of the reality of the situation.
I think what surprised and even shocked some people was the erratic and incendiary language that was used by some of the officials of the Trump administration, calling it Modi's war or, a laundromat of Kremlin. I mean, how do you react to this? I mean, are conciliatory noises coming from the other side now?
I think there could be either some misunderstandings or some personal opinions that may be reflected in that. I do not think that deters the US and India from continuing to maintain a strategic alliance and partnership.
Okay. So what are the red lines? Which are the no-go areas for you? Things that we will not compromise on.
I think any issue that can hurt national interests, that can hurt the interests of our farmers, our fishermen, our MSME industry, issues which are sensitive with religious sensitivity, those would be broadly the issues where India would need a more understanding when we finalize the framework of our agreement.
Just a couple of more questions, one around our newfound friend China. So Prime Minister Modi in Japan said that, China and India have to come together for a new global economic order. Can we trust China?
Well, I think we've always had good relations over many years with China. Unfortunately, the incidents post Galwan had brought a little bit of ice to the relationship and created a hiatus. Now that we have been largely able to resolve the issues of disagreement with China, I think it was very natural that we should also reset our ties, take them to the pre-Galwan level. And I think attending an SCO summit where many countries were all getting together had a multilateral dimension also, and a dimension of a whole grouping. And Prime Minister Modi attending the SCO there has signaled that we have a thaw in the to get back in the frost, get back into better relationship.
Diplomacy in 2025 often feels less like careful negotiation and more like a high-stakes game of musical chairs. Except here, the music never stops and everyone is running in different directions, it seems. This week, Putin was in China, first at the SCO summit in Tianjin and then at the military parade in Beijing. Yesterday, he held a press conference. Putin said that he is ready to meet Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president. In fact, Putin claimed that he had never refused to meet Zelensky.
By the way, Donald Trump asked me to hold such a meeting. I said this is possible. At the end of the day, if Zelensky is ready, let him come to Moscow, and such a meeting will take place.
So that's the catch. Putin is ready to meet Zelensky, but in Moscow. Now, security officials warned that Zelensky traveling to Moscow would be extremely dangerous. It is too risky for Zelensky. The Ukrainian president has proposed meetings in neutral countries, the likes of Austria and Turkey, but the Kremlin has consistently refused. So many analysts believe that Putin's public offer is more about appearances. And amid all of this, the Russian president also had a jibe for Washington, a colonial-era jibe. He warned the US to not use tariffs and sanctions to pressure India or China.
You have to think.
The colonial era is now over. They have to understand that they cannot use this tone, speaking with their partners, attempting to weaken their leadership, built through difficult histories, is a mistake. You have countries like India with 1.5 billion people, China with powerful economies, but they also have their own domestic, political mechanisms and laws.
Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, US President Donald Trump kept himself center stage. He told reporters that he would speak with Zelensky shortly. Remember, Trump has met Putin in Alaska. This happened last month. After that, Zelensky went to the White House. Then Trump set a deadline, a 2-week deadline for a meeting between Zelensky and Putin. That deadline has now expired. So what will Trump do? He's highly ambiguous and evasive about the next steps. He claims that strong action has already been taken. Listen to this.
Well, I'm having a conversation with him very shortly, and I'll know pretty much what we're going to be doing. We've taken very strong action, as you know, and in other ways we've taken very strong action. But I'll be speaking to him over the next few days, and we're going to see.
With who, sir?
I'm going to know exactly what's happening. But I'm not happy with all the people.
So Trump is going to speak to Zelensky. But what about Putin? Trump says he has nothing to say to the Russian president and that he's not happy.
I have no message to President Putin. He knows where I stand, and he'll make a decision one way or the other. Whatever his decision is, we'll either be happy about it or unhappy. And if we're unhappy about it, you'll see things happen.
What about Europe? What are they doing? Well, the so-called Coalition of the Willing is convening in Paris. This is a gathering of 30 countries led by French President Emmanuel Macron. The meeting is not just ceremonial, it is a high-stakes effort to outline concrete measures to support Ukraine.
We are ready as Europeans to offer security guarantees to Ukraine and the Ukrainian people the day a peace deal is signed. This is the commitment we made in Washington. The contributions that were prepared, documented, and confirmed this afternoon at the level of the defense ministers in an extremely confidential manner allow me to say the preparatory work is complete.
At the heart of the discussions are 3 major security guarantees. First, a reassurance force. This is meant to bolster Ukraine's defense capabilities on the ground. Second, expanded air patrols to monitor and respond to threats in the Ukrainian airspace. And third, a naval demining force to ensure that Ukraine's ports and coastal routes remain safe and functional. Together, these steps signal Europe's unified stance. In fact, the NATO chief was quite clear. Strong security guarantees for Kiev are non-negotiable. He said it was not for Russia to decide if the West can deploy troops to Ukraine. So this coalition of the willing, these 30 countries, are sending a message. Europe wants to back Ukraine and do so on its own terms.
Ukraine is a sovereign nation. If Ukraine wants to have security guarantee forces in Ukraine, to support a peace deal, it's up to them. Nobody else can decide about it. And I think we really have to stop making Putin too powerful.
So diplomacy is in full swing. But will this make a difference on the battlefield? Yesterday, Russia launched more than 500 drones and missiles at Ukraine. There were explosions in the west of the country near the Polish border. NATO jets were scrambled. Some people were even killed. So while leaders may meet and make pronouncements, the war does not wait for meetings, summits or press conferences. Ukraine has missiles and drones raining down. People are still dying. Meanwhile, Putin is striking a calm, strategic pose. In Washington, Trump is being ambiguous and non-committal. In Paris, the Europeans are plotting concrete actions. Basically, there's a lot of talking as the clock keeps ticking and the music never stops. Picture this. You're in Tiananmen Square. The air smells faintly of gunpowder. The pavement is crowded with soldiers in perfect formation. Jets are roaring overhead. It is China's biggest ever military parade. Everyone is focused on pomp and power. But 3 people are thinking about something else entirely. Chinese President Xi Jinping, Russian President Vladimir Putin, and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. You must have seen these pictures. They were all walking side by side. But thanks to a hot mic, the world heard their private conversation. And do you know what they were talking about? Not trade, not treaties, not nuclear weapons. No, they were musing about something far stranger. Living to 150 years old.
In the past, people rarely lived longer than 70 years. But today, they say that at 70, you are still a child.
Human organs can be continuously transplanted. The longer you live, the younger you become, and you can even achieve immortality.
You heard that right. 150 years, and not metaphorically or philosophically, literally, through organ transplants, biotechnology, and if you believe them, some version of immortality. Xi, Putin and Kim were not joking. At one point, Xi said, earlier people rarely lived past 70, but these days at 70, you are still a child. And Putin chimes in. He says, organ replacements and biotechnology have made it easier. Humans can even become immortal. This is not just fantasy. It is strategy. Longer life equals more years in power, and that means more influence, more time to shape history on their terms. Both Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping are 72 years old. Putin has already ruled Russia for more than 2 decades. He has state-run institutes researching anti-aging, cell regeneration, and neurotechnology. Meanwhile, Xi Jinping lords over a nation that is pouring billions into biotech innovation. So for these men, longevity is not a vanity, it is a power tool. Perhaps this also shows why authoritarian leaders take science so seriously. Xi Jinping has not appointed a clear successor. Putin changed Russia's constitution to be able to remain in office for years. He too has not picked a successor. As for Kim Jong-un, he's just 41 years old, but he's already thinking about the future of his dynasty. That may explain the international debut of his daughter. She was present in China alongside him. And all of these men want to live longer because staying physically and cognitively sharp secures authority. And if you thought this was too much, well, think again. These leaders can also be paranoid. Some of them take extraordinary measures to keep details of their health secret. They even protect their biological material. I'm talking about saliva and feces. Reports say Kim Jong-un travels with a private high-security toilet. Every surface he touches is scrubbed down just to prevent anyone from collecting traces of his DNA, and the world saw proof of that in China. This is what Kim's team was doing after he left a meeting, wiping away traces of his DNA from the surfaces he touched. Meanwhile, Putin's security team travels with a poop suitcase. Yes, that is what it is called. His team reportedly retrieves his waste during international trips. This is to ensure that nothing is left behind for analysis. And it's not just them. Western leaders also have their quirks. Former US President George W. Bush used to travel with a portable toilet, again to secure his biological data during foreign trips. In 1949, Soviet leader Joseph Stalin reportedly had special toilets installed. This was to collect the waste of China's Mao Zedong. This was when Mao was visiting Moscow. But why go to such lengths? Because even a strand of hair or a sample of feces can reveal a lot about a person. Your medication, your health condition, and other sensitive biological information, all of it can be gathered with the help of one sample. And for someone chasing the dream of longevity, this is serious business. It tells you two things. One, while immortality may be expensive, it is also messy. And two, for some leaders, ambition does not end with nations or politics. It reaches into the biology of their own bodies because they want more time. They want more years to rule, more years to influence, more years to shape history. The pursuit of immortality is not just science fiction. It is a high-stakes game of strongmen. For them, time is power. For our next story tonight, let's shift our attention to Portugal. The European country has declared a national day of mourning after a tragic accident in Lisbon. An iconic funicular has crashed. It has killed at least 16 people and injured several others. A funicular is a type of railway system. It has two cars attached to the opposite ends of a cable. This allows people to travel up and down steep slopes. Lisbon's Gloria funicular is a national monument. It is used by millions of tourists. But now one of the cars has crashed. It has left the country in shock. So how did it happen? And what does this accident mean for the cable? Here's a report.
The yellow and white 140-year-old Gloria funicular. A national monument and a crowd favorite in Portugal. It consists of two iconic railway cars, attached to opposite ends of a cable with traction provided by electric motors, transporting about 3 million people annually. Going up and down a steep hill in central Lisbon, for years now, this attraction has drawn both tourists and locals. But yesterday, its car derailed in the narrow cobbled street. One of the cars crashed into a building near Liberty Avenue where the roads bend. The wreckage of the car sat lying on its side, with its sides and top crumpled, as smoke filled the air and people ran from the area. Parts of the vehicle, which are made mostly of metal, were crushed. Several passengers trapped in the wreckage had to be freed by emergency responders.
When I saw the other funicular going down, I shouted to my wife, "We're all going to die here," because I thought the elevator was coming to hit this one. That's because it has a high speed. You've seen that elevation from up there, about 200 or so meters unlocked from up there down there. It goes at a crazy speed.
The accident has killed at least 16 people and injured about 20 others. Foreign nationals are among those killed.
Of the victims, we have identified 7 men and 8 women, all adults, including foreign nationalities. We do not yet have information on the age or nationality of these victims.
It is not known how many passengers were on board when the crash happened, but the funicular can carry around 40 people. Officials have not confirmed what caused the crash yet, but eyewitnesses blame the braking system. They say that the brakes failed, sending the cable hurtling down the steep street and into a building before collapsing like a cardboard box.
We arrived at the scene in 3 minutes, getting there very quickly. The causes of the accident will have to be analyzed by the competent authorities.
It was coming down the hill. Something was wrong with the cable. It lost control, didn't have any braking ability. When it came around the corner, it crashed into the building.
An investigation has been launched into the accident. But the city's public transport operator says that all maintenance protocols were in place. There were regular weekly, monthly, and annual checkups. The funicular maker says that it is very sorry about what happened. The company has opened its own investigation. Meanwhile, the country is in shock.
No, I'm not going to take it ever again. I will last for as long as I last. And I probably won't live much more, but as long as I last, I will never travel on it again.
Portugal has declared a national day of mourning. Portugal was struck by a terrible accident with the derailment of the Gloria funicular in the heart of Lisbon. This is one of the greatest human tragedies in our recent history. Meanwhile, condolences have poured in from around the world. So as investigations continue and the city mourns the victims, the future of this historic cable car now hangs in the balance.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
So I think, let me rewind a little bit and, come to what you've been dealing with, and you've been at the center of all of it. Till about July 6th or 7th, things seem to be going fine with in our negotiations with the US. Then in a matter of weeks, we had a tariff of 25%, then another 25% on top of that. What went wrong in these few weeks?
Well, I think the US-India relationship is one of the most consequential relationships on the globe today. We are two very large democracies. We believe in the rule of law. We are allies and friends for long. We have had certain blips, like we had the sanctions post the nuclear tests in 1998.
Yes.
I look at this only as one more situation which will pass as there's a deeper understanding of the reality of the situation. And I'm very confident this relationship will only strengthen in the years to come.
And how soon do you expect things to resolve?
It could happen soon enough. It may take some time. Irrespective, we will continue to be friends. We will continue to be engaged with the United States. And I'm sure we will continue to have greater economic relationships, defense relationships, greater interest in a safe, fair and secure Indo-Pacific. In some sense, it's a very multi-dimensional relationship where we contribute to each other's economies in different dimensions and will continue to do so.
It's comforting to hear these words from you. And we also picked up that you said somewhere that things could happen as soon as November. Is that a correct?
Well, if you recall, when Prime Minister Modi and Honorable President Donald Trump met in February, they had tasked the two teams to conclude the first tranche of a bilateral trade agreement by fall of 25, which is about November 2025. And I'm sure we will continue to be engaged to try and find solutions to reach that outcome. If at all it's give and take a few days, a few weeks, a few months, in a nation's history, such small periods will not define long-term objectives and goals.
I think what surprised and even shocked some people was the erratic and incendiary language that was used by, some of the officials of the Trump administration, calling it Modi's war or, a laundromat of Kremlin. I mean, how do you react to this? I mean, are conciliatory noises coming from the other side now?
I think there could be either some misunderstandings or some personal opinions that may be reflected in that. I do not think that deters the US and India from continuing to maintain our strategic alliance and partnership. Our friendship is far stronger than a few comments that may be made by a few people.
China in the beginning had retaliated with retaliatory tariffs. Would India do anything like that?
Well, India is a patient
Another day, another tech lawsuit, and once again, the name in the spotlight is Google. A US federal court has fined the tech giant. Google has been told to pay $425 million. The reason? Something most of us fear but cannot always prove. Violation of privacy. It all started in 2020. A lawsuit was filed against Google, a class action lawsuit. It covered more than 98 million users and 174 million devices. The charge? Google secretly collected third-party data even after users asked it not to. You know those apps where you sign in using your Google account, Uber, Amazon, Instagram, and countless other apps? The moment you log in using, say, your Gmail credentials, Google does not just stop at authentication, it starts talking to those apps. It starts tracking you, your rides, your shopping, your messages, your scrolling patterns, all of it is tracked by Google. Of course, there are checks in place. So yes, Google asks for your consent. And yes, you can toggle privacy settings. But here's the core of the lawsuit. Even after users opted out, even after they told Google to stop tracking them, Google kept collecting data behind the scenes. And it wasn't just storing this data, it was also selling it. At least that's what users claim, that the company was selling their data. Now, about 5 years later, a US court has passed the verdict and it has found Google guilty. It says Google breached user privacy, which is why the company has been slapped with a massive fine. Of course, Google is not too happy. It claims that it honors people's choice and collects only what it calls non-personal data. Google says this data is stored in secure, encrypted locations, and it wants to appeal the court's decision. But it won't be easy, because this is not a one-off case. Earlier this year, in the month of May, Google agreed to pay $1.4 billion. This was in a separate case involving people's facial features, voice prints, and their location, all allegedly tracked even when users opted out. And you may remember what happened last year. Google was told to destroy billions of user records. Apparently, it tracked people even though they were browsing privately on the incognito mode. Now, all of this is seriously problematic. What's worse, this is not just about one company. Zoom out and you'll see a pattern. It is the same problem with most companies, especially tech giants. Look at the reports between 2019 and 2022. Tesla employees shared invasive video recorded by their customers' cars. In 2023, Amazon was fined $30 million. Its AI assistant Alexa and Ring doorbell camera unlawfully collected voice recordings and kept them for years. This year, Meta agreed to settle a lawsuit for $8 billion. It was sued after data of millions of users was leaked. So pick any industry, tech, auto, social media, and you will see the same problem. Violation of our privacy. We read massive consent forms, brave lengthy website cookie alerts, switch on privacy settings, but let's be honest. Do we really know what happens to our data? Where it goes, who sees it, or how much of it is collected? The fact is, most apps are talking to other apps. They're harvesting our information, tracking our moves like an assassin, and mutely collecting our queries, our preferences, passions, anxieties, everything. So yes, we can sign consent forms. They're like privacy placebos. Yes, we can sue companies. Yes, we can demand answers. And yes, this Google verdict is a step forward. But as tech moves fast and change comes slowly, the question is, who really is in control here? After all, in this digital world, data is not just information, it is identity, it is power. So privacy is no longer just a right, it is a battlefield. The world has just witnessed how it's done. If you did not catch that reference, I'm talking about the Netflix animated movie K-pop Demon Hunters. It's about a fictional K-pop band that hunts demons and protects the world. Sounds like a lot, right? But K-pop Demon Hunters has become a surprise sensation. It is now the most watched film in Netflix history. Its soundtrack is dominating global music charts. Social media cannot stop talking about it. And here's the surprise. The film is boosting tourism in South Korea as well. Seoul is seeing record-breaking visitor numbers, and the government says it is thanks to this film. But this is just one example of how South Korean culture has become its soft power. So how did this happen? And what does the Korean wave economy look like? Here's a report.
K-pop Demon Hunters, the original animated Netflix film. It follows the members of a fictional K-pop girl group as they juggle demanding careers and fight to save the world from soul-stealing demons. Ever since it released in June this year, the film has been golden. If you haven't watched it yet, we simply mean to say that K-pop Demon Hunters has burned up the internet. It has become Netflix's most watched film ever, amassing 236 million views as of last month. It was streamed for about 250 million minutes during its release week. It has also broken records at box offices. And that's not all. Its music has topped global charts and inspired dance challenges. It has played everywhere from clubs to children's birthday parties. The movie has birthed memes and social media trends, merchandise and fan art. K-pop Demon Hunters has become an unexpected juggernaut. So much so that it is boosting tourism in South Korea. Seoul tourism is reaching new highs, or should we say, going up, up, up. It hit a record 1.36 million in July, This is a 23% increase from the 1.1 million recorded in July last year. And most of it is thanks to a bunch of fictional singing teenagers. We aren't making this up. According to the city government, the boost in tourism is being driven by the K-pop Demon Hunters craze.
Piyush ji, thank you so much for giving Network 18 this exclusive interview. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
What a day to be interviewing you. You know, historic reform in GST rationalization. You've been in the center of news for so long, so it's a great time to be interviewing you. My first question, all this started with the Prime Minister's address on the 15th of August, Independence Day, when he spoke about Atmanirbharta. He framed it in the context of Swadeshi, he framed it in the context of quality drive, and he also